Hello and welcome to Business Sense. I'm Ralph Rivas. For today's episode, we have Property Guru Asia Property Awards General Manager Jules K. Now, Property Guru Asia Property Awards is, of course, one of the region's largest and most respected real estate awards program. So, Jules, I'll leave it to you. Tell us more about this awards and what's in store for 2022.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me. First of all, nice to be here. Well, really, the Property Guru Asia Property Awards is a regional platform to showcase the best real estate developments, developers, designs across the Asia Pacific region. And the Philippines Property Awards is part of that series, a very important part of that we've been running for several years. And the Philippines developers and projects have already done very well on the regional stage over the years. So this year we're marking our 17th year of the Asia Property Awards. We currently now cover 12 different markets around the Asia Pacific region, and we have standalone gala dinner presentations in many of the core countries where we see the real estate market developing fast and becoming more niche, segmented, innovative, and sustainable. And that's part of what we do. We encourage the development of the industry by recognizing the developers and the properties that are really, taking things to the next level. So we come together. We have our Philippines Property Awards every year, and then we also have a regional grand final where the Filipino developers will be competing with developers from other countries like Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, all the way up to China for the title of Best of Asia. And that will happen at the very end of the year. So, our awards basically it has a strong reputation for credibility. We're fair, transparent. Our judges are all independent experts from the industry. And we even have an extended auditing process by an independent auditor to make sure everything's fair and above board. So that's the reputation of the awards, and that's how we cover the region.
Yeah, so Jules, tell us what's hot and what's not in the property sector these days.
Well, obviously, we're coming out of a pandemic, right? So things are developing quite quickly now. I think regionally, we're seeing across the whole of Southeast Asia a gradual and very positive rebound in the real estate sector. But each country is responding to recovery in its own way, right? So just as we're shifting from pandemic to endemic in many countries, so property developers and buyers are taking a cautious but optimistic view of the recovery. I think we can see in the Philippines, all the latest market reports suggest there's an increase in supply of residential units for 2022, which is a good sign. There are also positive signs that the rental market is recovering, picking up. Travel restrictions are easing. International investment is growing again in the Philippines. And of course, the BPO sector is looking to bounce back. So I think, one of our biggest award winners from the Philippines last year was SMDC. SM you'll know very well for their shopping malls and also their residential project. And their president was calling out the fact that there's still a lot of pent-up demand. There's a lot of supply that needs to enter the market in the Philippines, which is a very encouraging sign now that things are returning to normal, or at least new normal. So that's a very positive sign. I think also, as I mentioned with the BPO sector, the return to office is going to be something that affects the real estate market in the Philippines very strongly. And we've also seen that in other markets. As people come back to the office, they transform areas again. In turn, they supply, customers for retail. They supply diners for F&B outlets, and things start to open up again around the return to office sentiment. But it won't be a return to office that we're familiar with, because I think the office now will be more of a place that you go on a need-to-go basis, not on an everyday basis. And I think that's something that will change with real estate development. It'll become more localized because people will also be working from home, and that integration of work and home is going to feature a lot as the real estate industry grows across Philippines and other countries.
Yeah, Jules, can you add more flavor to that detail on the current trends amid the pandemic? Do we see bigger developments or much more medium-sized in terms of the real estate or the residential sector, or just tell us a little bit more details on that.
Well, I think, yeah, from a regional perspective across our 12 countries, we're definitely seeing demand for more space, more air, a healthy living environment. So yeah, people are looking not necessarily for bigger properties, but for properties that have that option to go outside, perhaps more integrated developments where there are green spaces, there are eco-friendly features, you have easy access to the amenities you need for your daily life, so you don't have to travel so far. Or if you do have to travel, then your property is easily connected to transport, whether that's public transport, roads, highways. So the transport-oriented development is a growth area, and definitely integrated developments that have easy access to retail, to food, and definitely to green spaces. I think there's a lot of co-working, co-living concepts that began before the pandemic, but will now extend post-pandemic. People who work and live at home don't necessarily want to work in their bedroom or in their living room, right? So I think developers are looking at innovative ways to integrate the work and home life experience, and that will definitely have an impact on the type of properties we see coming into the market across various countries in Southeast Asia going forward. We have a very young, dynamic, buyer pool in many of the countries around this region, and they're leading the demand for innovative solutions. And I think that's really good for the market, because we'll see some great ideas, some new designs, and that will be based on people's need to live a healthier lifestyle.
Now, going back to the property awards, of course, the most coveted one is the best developer in the Philippines and in Asia. So, what will it take for developers to get this award? I mean, what are you guys looking for?
Okay, well, I mean, the criteria, as I say, we are judged by an independent panel of experts in each country, and then the chairperson of each country's panel forms the regional panel. So what happens there is it's very much a discussive decision-making process. So the criteria include obviously the quality of the products that they've been creating, the sustainability elements, their reputation, their value for money, how they've been developing their projects to suit the market, so the relevance to the market, and also the number of projects that they have launched and successfully sold over a period of time. So these are the sort of stricter criteria to qualify as a best developer. But then it comes down really to the judges' impressions when they present their projects. So the developers will submit examples of their projects to qualify for consideration as best developer. So that if they cover a range of different sectors, if they're not just cookie cutter repeat projects that look exactly the same, but something innovative, something a bit challenging perhaps, maybe new areas that they've been responsible for driving demand, then that will all count in their favor when it comes to the final decision on best developer. And as I said, the people on the panel, the judges, they may come from a design and architecture background, from a consultancy and development background. We have surveyors, we have lawyers, we have a whole range of property experts involved in the decision-making process. So really, as a developer, they have to be covering all aspects of development to win that coveted award. It's not easy, but there are always going to be winners from the Philippines, because the Philippines' quality of developers is very high.
Now, you briefly touched about sustainability. Now, do you see sustainability, the role of sustainability to have, the role to be bigger this time, especially with the pandemic factored in?
I think, yes, sustainability. I mean, all the property sectors are now treating sustainability more seriously. And, whether it's residential, commercial, office, even industrial, right? They're embracing more green features as a standard. I think in many ways, it's the commercial property sector that's really led this. and have been very strong in this respect, especially in the Philippines, actually, with there's a preference there for sustainable buildings. You have EDGE certification. You have a lot of Green Building Council certification of projects in the Philippines. And I do think, yes, from our perspective, I think we started off with the Best Green Development Award. We also have special recognition for Sustainable Design and Construction Awards. We've introduced Eco-Friendly Project Awards to really embrace the developers or projects that are trying to do something positive in sustainability, but don't necessarily have, an international certification yet. So yeah, definitely, as we see the market become more aware of green and sustainable features, we expand our categories accordingly, so that there's recognition for that, because recognition in turn promotes a focus on that area, and people, developers want to be recognized for their efforts when it comes to sustainability. I think I saw some stats recently that some 40% of the new supply in the Philippines, in terms of commercial buildings particularly, will be either LEED or WELL certified buildings, which was quite incredible, right? I mean, that's a very strong percentage coming into the market. And you're talking about innovative features. It's not just, we don't use much electricity, or we have green spaces. We're talking about things like low density ratios, thermal insulation to protect, to keep the cool inside, touchless equipment for health, vertical gardens on the external facades of the buildings, filtered air circulation. A lot of health and sustainability come hand in hand, and we see that happening a lot, not only in the Philippines, but particularly in other countries like Singapore, where it's almost a standard now. And I think that's very encouraging. And from the awards perspective, we're quite proud that we've been part of helping to drive that trend.
Yeah, I mean, and another issue there in terms of sustainability is that it's still perceived as somewhat expensive when you go green. Do you agree with that assessment, or is that an old, outdated mindset?
I think what's happened in recent years, and actually may become more relevant post-pandemic, especially now because the cost of fuel is driving up the cost of materials, etc., is that sustainability and green features save you money, right? So you may have to, as a developer, spend more in the initial stages of a project, but you're also going to save when it comes to energy use and various aspects of the actual building of a property will be cheaper if you're using sustainable practices. So they do offset each other. And then more importantly, from a consumer perspective, we're really seeing now that the modern buyers, property buyers, expect sustainable buildings and green features. And that will actually add a premium to your property price, because people will choose the building that is more sustainable over the one that's not. So therefore, there's a balance there to be considered across the board. It's not just a question, it's expensive, but it's like it might cost more, but it might make more, and it might save more. So there's really a whole cycle now of considerations around green. And at the moment, what we're seeing is that people will favor, a more sustainable approach.
Now, another award here is Best Office Development. So can you give a rundown on the trends, the past winners, and what are the most likely qualities that judges are looking for this time around?
Well, I mean, it's good that you brought up again the sustainability issue, because that's something that definitely comes into the office sector. But it's also things to do. It's also to do with the amenities. I mean, I think what we're seeing now, and is going to be increasingly happening, is a change in the way that people perceive their workspace, right? So when we're looking at offices, we're also looking at how they cater to the sort of daily needs of the workforce, more than just a row of desks or a line of people sitting at their computers. What leisure facilities do they offer? Where can you relax? Where can you communicate? Where can you hold your meetings in a comfortable way? where can you interact with your fellow employees and staff in a way that encourages ideas, encourages new ways of coming up with innovation. So I think it's as much about the project, the way it's built, the design, the sustainability features, as it is about how it caters to the needs of the individuals that are using that project. And I think, office development is something that actually is very innovative across many of the countries where we operate. So we're always looking for something new and interesting out of the commercial sector, the office sector. And generally, we've found that it's, including the Philippines, I think Artaland, we look now, Neo is one of our judges, a former recipient of our Real Estate Personality of the Year award from Neo in the Philippines, who have got an EDGE carbon neutral project going on, which is one of the first of its kind. Artaland have also created some very interesting projects in the past, a net zero, or at least, working towards this eco sustainability benchmark. So I think that's a very important part of the office development. And I do think the office sector, particularly in the Philippines, is strongly positioned to bounce back, right? There's a lot of outsourcing requirements from countries like US, Australia, Europe, and the Philippines is definitely high on the list when it comes to BPO. So, that's in that sense, the office sector is going to transform and grow particularly strongly. I think in the Philippines, we'll hopefully have a lot to choose from for that particular category.
Now, of course, an awards giving body will also have to give credit for best architectural design. So any trends in Asia in particular that you're seeing? Are we seeing more and more minimalist, or are we going back to the grand designs once again? Taller is better, more more grand designs. So tell us about that.
Well, I think if you look across our awards over the last couple of years, obviously there's been a trend towards a lot of the things that I'm mentioning already. This consciousness of health and wellness, as well as style and the grand design. Yeah, so I think space is important. Access to the outside, the outdoors is important. You're seeing a lot of planted exteriors, which is great. Actual entire buildings that have been designed with vertical gardens. There's also the use of rooftop spaces or balcony spaces to give people more access to the outside world. These are all important aspects of architectural design. We're also seeing a lot of integration between different elements. So, I mean, earlier you mentioned about trends. I think, mixed use and integrated projects and townships are also becoming a trend. And that really puts, a lot of emphasis on design and architecture. If you look at the master planning that is going into some of these large scale developments, you could have 5 to 10 different types of residential choice within the same township, right? And then you'll have a fantastic retail element that really, looks almost like something from a sci-fi film. And then you've got, the way that they plant and design the green spaces, the landscape architecture is now more and more integrated into the project, so that people can run, cycle, and have even access to water, lakes, etc. It's all built in as part of the overall master plan. So I think that kind of integrated approach to architecture is something that's really taking off. And I think another thing is that standing out, it's not what you see, but it was how people see you. And you see a lot of that now with some really challenging almost architectural designs that are going beyond your box square towers, and with a lot of interesting geometrical shapes, challenging uses of color on the exteriors of buildings. I think, so it's a good, at the moment, it's a very exciting time for architecture. And I think there's a lot of new ideas coming in. So it's an interesting one to judge. And we do have a lot of architects on our judging panels in the region. So that's always a lively conversation when we get to the design awards.
Mm. Now, we mentioned design. It has to be trendy and catch the attention. It has to be green. It has to take into consideration public health. Now, what does it mean for price points? Are developers trying to bring prices down to meet uh, the desired amount of customers, or are they pushing the limits? So, what's the trend these days?
No. Well, I think what we've seen again, and this is regional, but also in the Philippines, is a trend in both directions, right? So there are the ultra, like we used to have best luxury condo, right? Now we have best ultra luxury condo. Yeah, and our, when it comes to our sectors, we go from affordable through the mid end, to the upper end and to the luxury end, right? So
So ultra, sir, the ultra luxury, how many millions are we talking about?
well, it depends on the country, right? You can go up to, if you go to China, you could be looking at 20 million US dollar, 30
Wow.
million. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's not the same in every country, right? I mean, it could, so we benchmark against the price points of that market, right? And then we get our advice from the major agencies in that country. What are different sectors selling for in a particular market, and then we create different categories. So in order to be fair, we want, if a project wants to enter at the mid-range level, then that's based on that price point. They will only be competing against other projects in that price point. So yeah, and what we've noticed as a trend is that there's more available at every price level now, which is great. Even at the very affordable level. I mean, I think the Philippines actually led the way last year during the sort of the height of the pandemic. There were a lot of solid properties being offered at the affordable end of the market, because there's a challenge economically as well as in terms of the health of people, and they wanted to meet that demand and meet it in a way that people can afford. So yeah, we did award a lot of properties in the affordable end last year as well. But in terms of the real innovation and I guess design, out there designs, that usually can be seen at the luxury end of the market, yes, because that costs money, obviously.
So really interesting conversation that we had. Thanks so much for sharing the trends, and looking forward to the set of winners for this year, and not just this year, for the next couple of years. And of course, the awards show us the trends and where the property market will go. So again, thanks so much, Jules K, Property Guru Asia Property Awards General Manager. This has been another episode of Business Sense. I'm Ralph Rivas. Thanks for watching.